Hey young friends, Dr. Bill here. I am so glad that you could join me for today's lesson. We're continuing our look at big names in the Bible, and today we're doing the second lesson on Samuel. You may recall that last week we talked about Samuel's experience of being called by God when he was very, very young. Now, however, with today's lesson, we pick up where Samuel is a much older man. And so the story I want to share with you goes like this. One day, the people of Israel came to Samuel and they said, "Samuel, we want to be like all of the other nations. We want to have a king. We want someone to rule over us." Now, when Samuel heard this, he was very disappointed. Samuel believed and believed strongly that only God should be the king of the people. Nevertheless, he took their words to heart, and as he did so frequently in his life, Samuel prayed about this matter. He asked God what he should do. God spoke to Samuel and said something like this. Samuel, when they make this request for a king, they are not rejecting you. They are rejecting me. Listen to them. What I want you to do is to warn them about the dangers of having a king, and if they still want a king, then you may go ahead and anoint the person that I point out to you to be Israel's first king. So Samuel did exactly as the Lord told him. He went, called the people together, outlined all the dangers of having a king, and when he had finished, the people of Israel said, "We still want a king." So Samuel said, "Okay, I will help you find your first king." And with that, he dismissed the people. Samuel was at home sometime after that, and the Lord had told him that he would meet someone who was searching for his lost cattle, and that would be the person that would be the first king of Israel. So sure enough, Samuel looked out the window of his home and saw a man named Saul coming close. Saul was searching for some cattle he had lost. So Samuel went out and engaged Saul in conversation, and then he told Saul, "Listen, the cattle that you're looking for, they have all been found, they're safe, and I want you to come and have dinner with me." And so Samuel hosted Saul for dinner, had a big festive banquet for him, and then afterward he anointed Saul to be Israel's first king. Later on, Samuel called all of the people of Israel together, and he announced that Saul was going to be their king. And so that's how Israel got its first king. Samuel was very, very involved in the process. Now, there are a couple of lessons that I think we can learn from this episode in Samuel's life. The first is that sometimes God asks us to do hard things. Now, I know that many times when we talk about our faith, we talk about how we have been blessed, or we talk about the gifts, the good things that God has given us. All well and good. But sometimes God asks us to do hard things, things that we ourselves may not agree with. God may ask us to do something that we just sort of say, "I'm not sure this is the right thing to do." Well, Samuel, having heard what God said, went ahead and helped the people of Israel find and anoint their first king, even though it was something he did not want to do. So here's a lesson for us. We need to be prepared and understand that sometimes our faith will require us to do hard and difficult things, things that we may not necessarily enjoy, things that we would normally be inclined to say, no way, not going to do that. Nevertheless, we can learn from Saul that when God asks us to do things that are hard, we should still say yes. The second lesson is this. We pick up Samuel's story today when he was an older man. And it's apparent from the story that Samuel was listening and paying attention to God. This was something he learned as a young boy. You may recall from our story last week that Samuel was living in the temple, serving the temple, and he was guided by an older priest, a man named Eli. And one night, while Samuel went to sleep, he heard a voice, "Samuel, Samuel." And Samuel, thinking that Eli was calling him or wanted something, he got up, went to Eli's bed and said, "You called me, what do you want?" Well, this happened again, and on the second time, Eli sort of clicked in and said, "You know, Samuel, I didn't call you, but God may be calling you. So when you go back to bed, if you hear that voice again, you should simply say, 'Here I am.'" Well, that's exactly what Samuel did. And that was the first time that he learned how to listen to God. Our story today picks up with Samuel being an older man, and he is still doing what he did as a young boy. That's an important lesson. The younger we start out trying to pay attention to God, the better suited we'll be to pay attention to God later on. Faith is all about learning to listen for God's voice, to try to figure out what God is up to. And if we develop the habit every day of being attentive to God, trying to hear what God says to us, well, the better equipped we will be to hear God the next time God speaks. It's a learned behavior. It's something that requires practice. And Samuel was able to listen as an older man because he had started out when he was younger. Faith is a lifelong process, and we are always trying to learn how better to listen to God and to figure out what God wants from us. Well, that will do it for today. Again, I'm glad that you joined me for this lesson. This weekend is the 4th of July, and I hope that you have a lot of fun, whatever you and your family will do, whether it's going to fireworks displays or concerts, taking picnics, going swimming, going to the lake, whatever. I hope you just have a wonderful, wonderful time. And until we get together again, I just hope that you take care of yourself, and I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.